So welcome to this presumably last video, although I might add some supplementary videos in the coming weeks or months, depending on my time schedule. This is on Berlin's cooperative startup scene, and it takes an ecosystems view. So Berlin has been dubbed a startup hotspot, with companies like Zalando having their roots there. There are numerous fascinating examples of innovative forms of cooperation that continue to build up a local ecosystem, making the sector a worthy candidate for a case study to close out on this dissertation and present some perspectives for the future. In particular, Berlin's startup scene has been increasingly influenced by the debate around platform cooperativism that I have introduced in this module, actually. In fact, the most recent conference on platform cooperative consortium took place in Berlin in 2021. The first group I would like to profile here is Platform Cooperatives Germany, which is an umbrella organization that advises and consults with the burgeoning platform cooperative scene in Berlin specifically, and Germany generally. It was started by Ella Kagel, Andreas Arnold, and Claudia Henke in 2018. It started from Supermarkt Berlin, an open space for events and consulting within the domain of open source and collective paths to digitalization, and which also was actually originally a supermarket. In fact, Supermarkt Berlin didn't start with the purpose of consulting with platform cooperatives, as Ella Kagel, who's been working as a strategist in the digital arena for over 20 years, commented. Kagel herself was at the time more involved in the artistic and creative scene in Berlin, being involved in the Ars Electronica Festival and similar projects. Ella stated that she found out about platform cooperatives via Trebor Scholz, who hosted the first PCC conference in 2015 in New York. Ella and other Berlin stakeholders were invited. Ella commented that she immediately understood that it was an important central issue, the question of organization and coordination of people worldwide, co-determination, German notion of Mitbestimmung, and property questions I had been asking for years, as Ella suggested. Ella and colleagues like Andreas Arnold and Claudia Henke started putting the platform cooperative issue on the agenda in Berlin and hosting an event in 2017 entitled Platform Cooperatives Start Your Own. Many stakeholders attended, including the founders of Airbnb, Damiano Avellino, Smart Germany, Magdalena Ziomek, which I profile in a moment, as well as various taxi collectives and others. Kagel described the crowd as the first wave of platform cooperatives. During the event, Ella and others had the impression that it was an important topic. The group began advising many digital platforms and also traditional cooperatives interested in digitalization. Examples include DNA Merge, which was interested in democratization of their fan t-shirt logistics. During this process, Ella, Andreas, and others noticed that this wasn't just a theoretical alternative, but that it was a real model. The final impetus to start Platform Cooperatives Germany occurred in 2018 with the exit of Deliveroo from the German market, which involved the firing of drivers, many on short notice. This promulgated an initiative in Berlin to found an alternative cooperative, and this meant that people came to us, Ella commented, including the group that would later be founded as Cora, a Berlin-based delivery collective organized on cooperative principles. This group, the group invited Jonas Prenzien, Dominic Pietron, and other experts to discuss issues and develop strategies. The realization dawned that multi-stakeholder discourse was necessary, including with the municipality. At the time, the question was how to keep an interest on the part of different stakeholders. In the end, Smart Germany became the project basis for Cora, much as the result of the personal agency of Magdalena Ziomek. This led Ella Kagel to conclude that it is generally the people, not the institutions, that matter. Ella described Magdalena as a doer who backs and creates things and isn't afraid to rattle the cage. At this stage, there was a need to devise a legal personality to divide the activities on the platform cooperative issues from Supermarkt, which has a broader range of activities. Thus, in 2018, Ella Kagel, Andreas Arnold, and Claudia Henke founded Platform Cooperatives Germany, along with Thomas Dönnebrink, Sol Chen Mai, and Magdalena Ziomek. The new cooperative needed capital, and the group applied for a grant for Pioneer Solutions in the digital sector. Asked about, I mentioned just a moment, or in the prior video, the idea of Katharina Pistor of reapplying different codes. The Code of Capital, of course, is her big book, and asked about the requests for hacking the existing legal architecture by startup entrepreneurs. Kagel responded that it is good when entrepreneurs are naive or ignorant because it helps them to retain a positive view. In terms of the services Platform Cooperatives Germany offers in this respect, Kagel stated that we can help startups plan and strategize, help plan a finance model, and look at questions of legal form regarding cooperatives. Regarding the legal form, Kagel stated that we have often have the case where people want to start a cooperative and we discourage them and encourage a UG, an Unternehmensgesellschaft, or GmbH, a limited liability company, with bylaws recognizing the cooperative character of the firm. Moreover, Kagel states that she herself has wound down cooperatives that have stopped having a purpose, and this is the sense she wants to give clients and those that she advises or they advise. In Ella's view, there are many corrupt cooperatives, thus she views the legal form as a vehicle, and we don't invest anything in the legal form. We also consult with limited liability firms, associations, and others. The more important question to Kagel is, where are we headed? Thus, she believes that many societies, including Germany, will have a need to reform firm legal structures. This is a process in which she would like to be involved with, developing a toolkit for different taxonomies and typologies of firms, depending on what's appropriate for different needs. For example, for international solidarity movements and campaigns. Each of these have financing questions, and often there isn't a good legal form for that. Thus, she concludes, I'm not an evangelist for co-ops, which are only as good as the people who are in it. In fact, one can do everything wrong with a cooperative. With respect to traditional cooperatives, Kagel believes that there is a very slow transformation. The traditional cooperative world looks at us with incredulity, amusement, and sometimes with a feeling of threat because we rattle their foundations. Furthermore, Kagel argues that we need to honestly speak about the fact that not all co-ops in Germany behave cooperatively, with, for instance, no member democracy. For her, the supermarket chain Rewe is a good example, which I profiled in a prior video. Also, cooperative banks. Speaking more generally, says Kagel, we have contacts now and again, and when we do, the contact is good, there is a need. What Kagel suggests is more interesting is the traditional enterprises interested in succession plans, worker buyouts, and so on. Two examples are Iteratec and OOC, two IT firms which wanted to convert from traditional to cooperative ownership. For example, Iteratec founded Nur dem Team, only for the team, a cooperative owned by all employees, which is buying out shares of Iteratec and will have full ownership of the company by 2026. OOC, a consulting and IT firm, socialized itself after years of crises in the firm. Andrea Grass, a member of OOC, has said of the transformation, I still do the same job but enjoy my work about twice as much. Kagel says of such cooperative conversions, they are a delicate flower which will grow in the coming years. The next case that I would like to profile is Smart Germany in particular. Smart refers to a set of networked firms that, as of this writing, which was 2022, exist in 10 European countries. Each of the firms is an autonomous independent company. Smart began with very strongly in the performing arts. In France and Belgium, there is a special unemployment insurance. In particular, artists and performers are never considered self-employed. Instead, they are always considered employees, even if they work for one project. In order to qualify for coverage under the Belgian model, artists must accumulate a certain number of hours of employment every year. If they achieve this, they receive a certain lifelong pension called statut d'artiste in Belgium and called intermittence in France. This means they receive unemployment insurance from the government. This scheme does not merely apply to performance artists, but also, for instance, to sound technicians, makeup artists, and so on. At the beginning of the 1990s in Belgium, in the independent and alternative performance scene, many individuals experienced an extremely precarious employment situation. Smart, which was founded in Belgium in 1994, adopted the name Société Mutuelle pour Artistes, SMART, and registered as a nonprofit in 1998, was able to fill a void by offering employment to a range of stakeholders. The idea is that freelancers register as employees and members of SMART and have their sporadic commissioned income paid out in a monthly salary, with SMART financing itself by taking a commission on each contract. Many were first able to reach the unemployment insurance through employment at SMART. In 2009, SMART expanded to France and Sweden. These foundations were accompanied by the foundation of a Spanish and later in Portugal, which share the same enterprise, firm in 2013. In the same year, SMART Italia was started. A Dutch SMART was also later created. In many ways, the German SMART is quite different from most others in that its membership pool is far more diversified. This means less creative economy people there, more gig workers, more collectives. Its main stakeholders are IT people, educators, and consultants. This makes SMART Germany the most open SMART compared to Italy and Sweden, which are just theater, dance, and similar professions, and France and Belgium, which are in the middle but heavily invested in the artistic scene. SMART Germany was initiated by Magdalena Ziomek, an art historian who began Agit Polski, particularly for 2005, particularly for Polish artists with problems adjusting to the German art market. According to Magda, as she is known, these problems result from the fact that there are no freelancers in Poland. Indeed, one would have to establish a firm for many immigrants, it is particularly difficult to make and fill invoices. Agit Polski has thus focused mainly on money issues. SMART Belgium became aware of Agit Polski and contacted Magdalena and Gabriele Koch. It was decided that SMART Germany should first be founded in Berlin, part of the reason being that SMART Belgium had reached its natural limits with 70,000 members and wanted to reinvest retained profits in building up international projects. One of the first initiatives preceding the formal creation of SMART Germany was the construction of SMART Beratungswerk, whose main services are consultations for people in the cultural scene. Beratungswerk still exists and is one of the three pillars of SMART Germany, the others being the cooperative itself and SMART Bildungswerk, another singularity of German law, which privileges pedagogical workers who are not required to pay VAT on their contracts. Thus, the Bildungswerk exists as a separate legal entity reserved for independent researchers, teachers, coaches, and trainers, rather. It was founded and is run by Gabriele Koch. Initially, according to Sebastian Hoffmann, Magda and other stakeholders identified the wrong problem and pitched primarily to theater people, as Magda described the demographic, for instance, at festivals and events. However, it was soon discovered that the German legal environment was not similar to the Belgian one. In fact, the Künstlersozialkasse, KSK, filled the role that SMART Belgium did in Germany for artists. Thus, with the realization that an emulation of SMART Belgium was impossible given the legal landscape, SMART Germany engaged in 2 years of experimenting and attempted to directly reach marginalized workers, particularly those whose needs were not addressed by the KSK. This included focus groups. The result was that a cooperative of a far more diverse range of freelance occupations than other SMARTs was founded. This had certain benefits, which we can discuss in the last case study in the Cooperative Economy, but which I review very briefly here. At the beginning, the composition of members was primarily immigrants, about 70%, but the ratio is now nearly at parity. According to Magda, this fact appears to serve the argument that co-ops best represent the interests of marginalized communities. The cooperative felt that an imperative to grow was there as people need this to survive. At SMART Germany's founding in 2017, the average member's monthly income was 800 euros. As of writing, this was in February 2021, it's 1,200 euros. It seems to be the same about now. I've just verified a few weeks ago. The scheme of paying forward provides the security. The German SMART uses employment contracts of 6 months instead of daily employment. This is again due to the particularities of German labor law, and most other SMARTs only offer daily labor contracts. There is even consideration at present to introduce an indefinite labor contract. This could be useful, for instance, for individuals looking to sign new leases or those applying for a loan. The cooperative covers losses if clients don't pay. It thus provides insurance that mutualizes risk. In many ways, the cooperative legalizes people within the German system, where much of social legislation, such as health insurance, is designed around the traditional employer-employee relationship. whose fundamental structure has remained largely unchanged since the Bismarckian laws were introduced in the 19th century. In fact, according to Magda, the German employer-employee relationship has a bit of an aura of holiness, or can be seen as a salve. The last case study here, those of you who've bear this out with me to the end, is Circles. And in fact, Circles considers itself to be a new way to think about money. Its handbook claims that people are generally used to perceiving money as money takers, not as money makers or money issuers. In contrast, Circles gives you the power to issue credit and become a real credit maker. Thus, the Circles currency that you create is your own personal currency. These can grow into a basic income within the network of people who are exchanging with each other the things that they need. Thus, in order to become an unconditional basic income, to claim enough wealth and be free of wage labor covering one's basic needs, political and economic organization is needed. People therefore take the responsibility of issuing promises to one another without the need to repay it back to a bank or a state. The handbook states that Circles is ideally meant for local municipalities, municipal constituencies, which can be federated following the principle of direct democracy. The system follows four main principles, including self-sustainability, that is the notion of reciprocal local interdependence, decentralization, democratic co-federalism, similar to the fourth cooperative principle, and localism, that is a call for autonomy and local democracy or democratic autonomy. These four principles are implemented in order to provide social and technical infrastructure to build alternatives to today's neoliberalism and corporate feudalism. Thus, the confederal structure resembles Pat Levine's negotiated coordination with its reference to subsidiary autonomous organization. The handbook claims that the fundamental unit of these structures is the circles of trust people organize within. It thereby aims to build an alternative economic structure based on local relations of trust and reciprocity. Circles uses trust, which flows in opposite directions of the circle's currency. Each person's circles are unique. Collective accounts exist as well. The handbook claims that trusting somebody in circles means that you are willing to accept their claims to get resources from you. Therefore, by such self-organized, autonomous, local, and interconnected networks of various stakeholders, from primary producers, logistics enterprises, service providers, and civil society, Circles aims to create circuits of local exchange so that obligations between different trusted peers can be cleared in a cyclical and nonlinear ways. The idea for Circles was initiated in 2013 as a universal basic income pilot project. The cooperative was finally founded in 2020. Central idea is to democratize money, according to founder Julio Linares. In the meantime, 20 to 30 businesses are accepting Circles as payment, or were as of March of this year. Promotion of Circles is led by the Circles activation team, or CAT, who promotes Circles via Meow Meow, another term for direct proselytizing. Assemblies are held once a month with markets where associated vendors display products, interact, and so on. The philosophy behind Circles is that the money form determines markets. The goal of Circles is therefore to make a basic income guarantee a reality. Moreover, the idea is furthermore that labor and value creation must be transformed as well. Longer-term goals include changing the structure of money. It is conceived as a new monetary token by means of which people can imagine ways to give vis-a-vis their activities. Around 100,000 accounts exist, and Circles is considered the biggest alternative currency community in Berlin. As of October 2021, around 200 people are using it actively. The core group consists of 10 to 12 members. 60% of the funding for Circles comes from Martin Koppelmann, an entrepreneur who got wealthy via cryptocurrency. Koppelmann actually got into crypto because of an abiding interest in universal basic income, according to Linares. Secondary funding comes from a small donor campaign. Thus, Circles is trying to position itself between crypto and UBI worlds, meaning it attempts to critique the hegemonic position in both communities, asking fundamental questions like, where does money come from? Thus, on the one hand, the project is the result of the fact that many crypto people are concerned with the concentration of wealth and power in supposedly decentralized systems, as Linares suggested. Such concentration occurs because generally there is no thinking about political economy in the domain of cryptocurrency. Crypto is thus colonized by the accumulation of money. One last thing I should mention, as mentioned there in my dissertation in the cooperative economy, there is a desire to integrate circles into SMART for purchasing services in an internal market between members. And in fact, there's been approval by the German Ministry of Economy for developing such a internal accounting system. SMART already has such a credit debit system. Using such a system, it is possible to create a meaningful logistics alternative, a non-exploitative business-to-business system, for instance, with farms delivering food to Reinickendorf's Super Co-op and Cora delivering items to members. The idea could help alleviate urban-rural divide, according to Linares. Other current prospective alliances include an attempt to connect circles with the Mietshäuser Syndikat, an association of autonomous, self-governing, and self-owning houses begun in accordance with the Freiburger model. The point of such connections is to continually expand a people-centered economy, according to Linares, and to provide people with new forms of agency, according to the Circle's member Caroline Goethe. Moreover, we may interpret the Circle SMART plan as an n-tuple helix with the components of profit maximization, cooperation, and novelty production. To the extent that the economic logic of profit maximization allows system throughput, the cooperative logic and logic of novelty production mutually determine another. Obviously, these two logics can again mutually determine the profit maximizing logic. It is moreover easy to see how the cooperation between SMART and circles can extend the triple helix to incorporate more elements such as education. As SMART is home to the Smart Bildungswerk, it is possible to imagine a system where, for instance, a German teacher at Smart Bildungswerk can exchange his or her services for produce, that is vegetables, from a farm in rural Brandenburg. This relationship I've modeled in the cooperative economy using these relational T-tables that I've pointed out in a prior video. Circles can be implemented to increase the matches in the universe, for instance, to introduce the need for a pure barter economy, to reduce the need. Thus, for instance, the farmer in our example may not require German lessons, but has a job in the city on the weekends and long commutes. Thus, the relational transaction can be extended by including more relationships. For example, perhaps a life coach at SMART requires German lessons, and a member of the Mietshäuser Syndikat may be able to use the services of a life coach due to a prolonged depression. Thus, the new relational T-tables would include these various transactions, and circles, of course, can facilitate these transactions. The possibilities for expanding such a cooperative n-tuple helix are truly limitless, as we have seen in the end of Module 3. The point of these examples that I demonstrate is to show that circles can serve to simplify these transactions. The fact that it employs a system of trust where each person's circles are unique and determined by their existing network lends such transactions an additional relational dimension. Since transactions are bilateral, there is no cause for alarm regarding exchange rates and prices, which can theoretically be determined in a transaction-specific manner. This allows the final exchange rate to incorporate contextual data like social and distributive justice. In the 3 case studies of Berlin's startup cooperative scene that I've just expressed, we have again seen the notion of a mission-oriented cooperative ecology perspective at work. We see it, for example, in the need for first understanding the environment before managing it, in the initial attempt, for instance, by Smart Germany to appeal to artists, whereas the German legal and institutional ecosystem preempted the same strategy that worked in Belgium from succeeding in the German case. Moreover, Elakagre's observation on the hacking of the legal system can be compared with Kant's notion of governing as a republic, even a formally despotic regime, and also to Katharina Pistor's notion or call for a new code, a legal code of capital. Indeed, it reveals that a cooperative logic must continually reconstitute itself in different contexts, that a suitable legal architecture, as is the case in Italy, is a necessary but not sufficient condition for democratic practice to succeed. The fact that collectives like Cora and Crow have joined SMART demonstrates that new cooperativism is a tool to incrementally transform both the platform economy by offering small startups a haven to manage certain aspects of the members' livelihoods. At the same time, it also offers a unique opportunity to circumvent Germany's particularly expensive cooperative startup costs, which average around 10,000 euros. In the past, many cooperative sympathizers who lacked the funds to start a cooperative had a limited palette of options, including variations of the limited liability company, GmbH. The desire to combine efforts by Platform Cooperatives Germany, SMART, and Circles also reveals that the regime described by the cooperative N-tuple helix takes on a trajectory that is relatively autonomous of particular plans, operations, and routines, or as Ella Cochran described, as a result of shared values and experiences. Cases like the Circle Smart internal market can be scaled and extended indefinitely depending on the stakeholders and organizations willing and able to participate. The integration of the Mietshäuser Syndikat appears a promising development with potentially transformative implications. This preceding discussion of Berlin's platform cooperative startup scene has attempted to show that a logic of cooperation is an essential element of a transformative approach to entrepreneurship, that such approaches often require a communal effort involving both social learning and social innovations, issues frequently associated with indeterminate outcomes. Such a fact impels the involvement of multiple stakeholders, applying a lens of shared value creation and a motor of relational contracts. Furthermore, I've attempted to show how the ecological and mission-oriented perspective advocated in this module can facilitate a deeper understanding of the qualitative shifts involved in such projects. In the cases that I've described, as of the case of the fire insurance and the influenza vaccine, with which I introduced this discussion, this module, it appears that the actual practices employed in such processes have arisen organically in a constrained, with regards to long-term orientation process, to meet acute needs, such as the need for strategies for both cooperative and traditional enterprises in and around Berlin to dealing with the cause of digitalization that later take on a more general development. And to conclude this course, this entire module has attempted to outline a research agenda based on a mission-oriented view towards cooperation. I refer to the perspective adopted here as a mission-oriented cooperative ecology. And as I have attempted to demonstrate, the perspective consists of an approach that first contextualizes the problem or issue at hand, whether that is tax evasion, rural regeneration, prophylactically preventing a deadly influenza pandemic, fostering an inclusive local platform economy, developing best practices for converting legacy businesses into more socially sustainable enterprises, and so on and so forth, and then moving up or down the appropriate level. Either rural regeneration begins locally, whereas the drive to develop influenza vaccines is a global effort. The fascinating thing about this approach is that it is infinitely scalable and applicable in nearly any environment. Thus, a cooperative N-tuple helix can function in Emilia-Romagna, where local governments have historically been very supportive of cooperative enterprise and have crafted amiable laws. But the above case studies demonstrate that a cooperative N-tuple helix can also succeed in environments not as amiable to cooperative enterprise. Thus, the UK example shows that given a right mix of resources and initiatives, an ascendant cooperative N-tuple helix can nevertheless arise. Mondragon in Spain is such an example, developed in the midst of a hostile fascist dictatorship. Another example is Cooperation Jackson, a fledgling cooperative federation in Jackson, Mississippi, inspired by the Mondragon model. Despite a hostile political and legislative environment that frequently preempts any successful attempts by the residents of West Jackson, mostly poor and Black, to self-organize, the group has been successful in boosting local knowledge-building efforts, focusing on sustainable local food production, recycling efforts, and affordable housing. The project has drawn some international attention, with some literature available. Moreover, during the recent climate change-induced crisis, like the sub-zero temperatures experienced in the US South in February 2021, or the current flooding in Jackson, Mississippi, that has, in fact, as I am speaking to you right now, for nearly 1 week, the city has not had clean drinking water. Cooperation Jackson was pivotal in distributing essential resources like water and food. Such efforts are essential elements of a cooperative N-tuple helix and can be self-reinforcing over the long term. Following this, one develops a cooperative n-tuple helix, bringing together as many stakeholders as are critical for devising and implementing an appropriate strategy. As we saw in the case of the community cooperative of Melpignano, it was the 70 citizens of Melpignano, Lega Coop Puglia, and the Pugliese regional government, as well as the local government in Melpignano. Similarly, in the case of Platform Cooperatives Germany, it was the former workers from the food courier sector, along with local stakeholders from open source software scenes, as well as academics and members of the municipal government. By communicating needs and desires, this multi-stakeholder approach facilitates the development of both shared agencies and individualized specializations. Both a shared set of basic values, goals, and a lexicon emerge, for instance, in the desire to find an amiable solution to generate renewable electricity without harming the local aesthetic, as in the case of Melpignano, as does a division of labor, such as legislators who write laws, local citizens who install solar panels, trade groups who advise and mediate between stakeholders. It is clear that the mission-oriented cooperative ecology is an extension of Elinor Ostrom's approach to commons management. While Ostrom addressed mainly the issue of governing common resource pools, the approach that we've developed here in module 3 and which I apply in all of this preceding discussions is flexible and can be applied to any resource or setting, just as Yoshai Benkler's notion of the extension of Ostrom's agenda has set forth. Whether we're talking about rural communities or platform cooperative startups in a dense urban environment. It is thus polycontextual. This approach focuses on relationalizing the governance of resources and resource in question and facilitates a shared agency between each stakeholder group. It is moreover able to balance both the economic logic of cost earnings as well as multiple other logics like conservation, destruction, voice, exit, and so on. It is thus a polylingual in outlook. Lastly, each of the prior case studies has exemplified the effect of social learning and social innovation on the ability for ascendant macrocultures to arise, in the language of module number 3. In the case of the UK, for example, the community shares model, as we learned, was primarily a repackaging of existing law. So again, this notion of hacking on withdrawable shares in a new form. Similarly, Platform Cooperatives Germany serves both as a result of a process of social learning and simultaneously seems to consist of processes of connecting and relationalizing ideas, stakeholders, and missions. Smart's approach to legitimizing freelancers similarly presents a qualitative transformation or hacking in providing a social innovation that begets a process of collective learning. Lastly, Circles has offered a new take on numerous existing ideas, presenting a synthesis of the worlds of cryptocurrency and universal basic income. I end now with 2 quotes. This now I finally return to answering the question that I asked at the beginning of this module, why I have a picture of the Cathedral of Florence on one of the slides. And here, of course, we have the inside of a cathedral. I'm actually not sure which cathedral this is. Kudos to any viewer who comments the actual cathedral that this is. I can find it out later, but I don't know at present. And it might be the inside of the Florence Cathedral. I don't think it is, although I've only ever seen it from the outside. In any case, to stop blathering on, the first quote comes from Mariana Mazzucato in her latest book, The Mission Economy, a Moonshot Guide to Changing Capitalism. And she says, when they built the cathedrals that are among Europe's most magnificent cultural achievements, the medieval master builders took chances that would drive a modern architect out of business. Nobody knew how much it would cost to build a cathedral or how long it would take. But these were missions with a purpose to demonstrate the glory of God through creativity. And they brought together many different sectors of society, clergy, craftsmen, nobles, rulers, and ordinary people. Today, the cathedrals are still with us. And in order to not have such a religiously flavored ending to this course on what is ultimately to be the cooperative economy towards a stakeholder-led democracy, I will have a quote now from Friedrich Nietzsche and his Fröhliche Wissenschaft, the joyful science. The time is past when the church possessed the monopoly of reflection, when the vita contemplativa primarily had to be a vita religiosa. And yet that is the idea expressed in everything the church has built. I do not know how we could ever content ourselves with its buildings, even stripped of their ecclesiastical function. They speak far too emotive and too constrained a language, as the houses of God and as the showplaces of intercourse with another world, for us as godless people to think our thoughts in them. We want to have ourselves translated into stones and plants. We want to have ourselves to stroll in when we take a turn in those porticos and gardens. So here is hoping that a true science of cooperation for and by cooperators can develop, and we are not stuck walking through the porticos that were designed for another world. And thank you for those who have had the patience to watch all these videos to the end. And you can email me for a special star or whatever, what have you. Thanks.